We're on the Gemara on Daf Tezvav Amud Aleph on the second line from the top of the Amud. So what are we discussing here? We're discussing the Chiddush of Rab Meir in the Mishnah on Daf Yudalad Amud Aleph, where he says that you're allowed to burn Chametz, Truma, Tahira together with Chametz, Truma, Tameya, even though usually you're not allowed to make Truma Tameh. But since you're burning it anyways, you're not going to be eating it, so you're allowed to burn it together. That was Rab Meir's Chiddush. Now, where did Rab Meir learn this from? That's the key that the Gemara is discussing. When you look at the Mishnah, it seems like he's saying that he learned it from Rab Chanina's Gana Kayanim and from Rab Akiva. The problem the Gemara had was both Rab Chanina's Gana Kayanim and Rab Akiva never said you could take Truma, which is Tahir, and burn it with Truma, which is Tameh. The only thing that they said was you can take two levels of Tumah, and even if you're elevating the status of the Tumah from a Shlishi to a Sheni, or maybe from a Shlishi to a Rishon, you're allowed to do that. But to say that you're allowed to burn Truma Tahira with Tameya, that we never saw. That was the Gemara's question. So the first answer the Gemara gave, which we're going to be discussing again today, is that when Rab Chanina's Gana Kainim spoke about burning Truma Tahira, two levels of Truma Tameya, he was actually speaking about taking Truma Tameya, which was Tameh Da'iraisa, and burning it together with Truma Tameya that was only Tameh Mid'Rabbanan. So Minat Taira, it's Tahir de Getruma. And still, they said that the Kainim burnt it together. And that's why we apply it to Chametz, the same thing, that you can burn the Truma Tameya of Chametz together with Truma Tahira of Chametz. But right now, the Gemara is going to bring a second pshat where Rab Meir learned his Chiddush from. And actually, he didn't learn it not from Rab Akiva, not from Rab Chanina's Gana Kayanim. He learned it from a completely different place. Let's see. This Mishnah, that's Rab Chanina's Gana Kayanim and Rab Akiva, they were talking about two levels of Tumah. And when Rab Meir said, I learned from their words that you could burn Chametz Truma, which is Tahir, with Chametz Truma, which is Tameh, he's not talking about Rab Chanina's Gana Kayanim. Midivrei Rab Eliezer v'Rab Yeshua. He learned it from Rab Eliezer and Rab Yeshua, completely different thing. No connection b'chlal to what it says in our Mishnah. Well, not no connection at all, but he didn't learn it from what Rab Chanina's Gana Kayanim and Rab Akiva said. Hi, Rab Yeshua. Now the Gemara asks, so where do we see that Rab Yeshua holds this? Where do we see that Rab Yeshua holds that you're allowed to make the Truma Tahira Tameh? Says the Gemara, if you're going to say that it would be the following Mishnah of Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua, there's a Mishnah that says that Tanan Chavis Shal Truma Shanailad La Safik Tumah. If you have a barrel of Truma that there was a Safik Tumah that came on this, so what happens if you have Truma that there's a Safik Tumah? You can't eat it. You can't do anything with it. So you have to burn it. Rabbi Eliezer says, Rabbi Eliezer, if it's lying in a place which is exposed, open, put it in a private place because it's only a suffix tumah. You don't want to allow it to become for sure tameh. According to Rabbi Eliezer, even something which is a suffix tumah, even though you can't eat it, nevertheless, you're not allowed to make it tameh. Just like we're learning a whole time here, that you're not allowed to make truma tameh. This applies even to Truma, which is a Safik Tumah. You're not allowed to have it become Vadei Tumah. And Rashi brings that he learned it out from a Pasik, the same Pasik that I spoke about in the beginning, as Mishmeres Trumaisai. So Rashi brings it in the Rashi Yanichana B'Mokem HaMutzna. As Mishmeres Trumaisai means that you have to guard Truma, and the Pasik Trumaisai, it's read in a plural term, meaning whether it's Truma Tahira, whether it's a Safik Truma, that might be Tameh, you still have to put it in a private place that it shouldn't become Tameh. And therefore, if this Truma, which is Safik Tameh, was uncovered, Yechasena, cover it, so a sheretz shouldn't fall inside of it. That's Rabbi Eliezer's opinion. Rabbi Yeshua says, if this Safik Truma, that it might be Tameh, is in a place where it's private, where it's covered, you could put it out in an open place, you could let it become Tameh. Or actually, it could even be that you should make it totally Tameh. Let it become totally Tameh. Because you anyways can't eat it as it is, so it becomes totally Tameh, and then you're allowed to use it for other things, other than eating. As long as it's a Safik Tumah, you can't really do anything with it. You can't eat it. You're not allowed to burn it either, because it might be Tahir, and a Tahir Truma, you might burn it. So put it in a place and let it become Tameh. If it was covered, Yigalena, uncover it, allow it to become totally Tameh. And Rashi brings over here again that he learned this out. He actually interprets the pasuk as Mishmeres Trumasi. He says you can read Trumasi Lashon Yochid. So it's only referring to Tahir Truma. Safik Truma, which you can't eat, you can let it become Tameh. So now, what's the Gemara bringing this here? The Gemara is saying, so let's apply the same thing for Truma, which is Chametz. If it's Chametz, then you can't eat it. So anyways, there's an Isser, and you can't eat this Chametz anyways, and that's why you're burning it. So if you're burning it because you can't eat it, so let it become Tameh. Just like Safik Truma, which might be Tameh. You're allowed to make Tameh, according to him, or maybe even you should make a Tameh. So the same thing with Chametz. When there's Mana Isser, you can go ahead and burn it. Says the Gemara, no, that's not a good comparison. Mi dami hasam grama ba'alma. There, what did Rabbi Yeshua say? Leave it in an exposed place and let it become tameh. Hacha biyadayim. Over here, you're taking the truma tahira and mamish by hand going and making it tameh. Who says the Torah allows that? Maybe the Torah only allows you to put it in a place that it's going to become tameh on its own. So you don't have any source from what Rabbi Yeshua said here that you could burn the truma tahira of chametz together with the truma tameh of chametz. So the Gemara brings another case, Elahar Rabbi Yeshua, the next Mishnah over there. These are Mishnayos and Masechta Trumais. The Gemara brought here, in Perik Ches of Trumas. We brought Mishnah Ches, now the Gemara goes to the next Mishnah there.
So Shlokish didn't say anything more than they learned it out from Rabbi
Right,
Yeshua.
exactly. But which Rabbi Yeshua he didn't say. So now we're bringing the next Mishnah there. Another halacha that Rabbi Yeshua said, we're in a case where you're allowed to be metame truma, which is anyways going to become tameh. Let's see the case. The Tanan, in the next Mishnah there it says, Chavis shal truma shenishbera. You have a barrel of truma that broke. So it has a barrel of truma of wine. And this is in a wine where they're pressing wine. So you have the barrel where they press the wine, and then they have the storage below that, the storage where they store wine that they have already had from before. So this is a barrel of wine of truma begas hal yoina, in an upper place in this press where they are pressing the new wine now. And this truma wine, the barrel broke. The tachtaina, right below it, there's chulin, tmein, you have stored over there, chulin wine, but which is tameh. So now what's going to happen? If you're going to allow this barrel of truma that broke and the wine is going to drip into the chulin barrel that's in the bottom, so now you're not going to be able to drink anything. Because what happens? The chulin which is tameh in the bottom, who could drink that chulin which is tameh? Any Yisrael which is tameh, or even if he's tired and he doesn't care to eat dafke things that are tahir, a Yisrael can eat the chulin which is tameh. But what happens now if the truma gets mixed into that barrel with chulin? So now you have a mixture of chulin with truma which is tameh. Who could eat it? Nobody. Not a Yisrael because there's truma mixed inside of it. Not a kohen because it's tameh, so nobody can eat it. So you want to try to save the situation so that all your chulin barrels of wine should not get totally ruined. So what are you allowed to do here? So the Mishnah says first, Meide Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua will both agree, Shem yochel lahatzel mimena revi'is betara. If you have an ability to save from this truma wine, a revi'is of it, in a clean vessel, yatzel. You have an obligation to save, to find a clean vessel to save this truma wine and not to make it tameh. In other words, the point over here is that the person has two options. Either he can go and grab any keli and catch the truma wine that's dripping out into this keli, even if this keli is tameh. And he's going to go be a dayim and make the chulin tameh by putting this keli, which is tameh there, and catching the wine into this tameh keli. Or he can go and find a clean vessel to catch the wine in a clean vessel. But what's the problem? He's going to have to run and search to find a clean vessel. In between, until he finds the clean vessel, the wine is dripping, and it's going to go into the bottom barrel where the chulin is, and it's going to meanwhile make it all tameh. Does he have to dafke find a clean vessel in order to catch the truma and that it shouldn't become tameh, or no? He's allowed to take even a tameh keli to catch the wine in it, even though he's going to be making the truma tameh. That's the question over here. So the first point the Mishnah says is, if you could find a clean vessel and save at least a revi'is of this truma wine, you have an obligation to do so, even if while you're going to go find your tardige vessel, it's going to end up dripping into the chulin on the bottom, and it's going to make the chulin on the bottom all tameh, together mixed with truma, and you won't be able to use it. If you don't have the ability to save of it a revi'is of this wine in a tardige vessel, Rabbi Eliezer tated. Rabbi Eliezer says, tated, let the wine drip down, v'tetame, and it's going to make the chulin barrel in the bottom tameh. Va'al yitamena biyad. And you are not allowed to catch this wine that's dripping out of the truma barrel by hand. You're going to be making it tamei. You're not allowed to do that. Rabbi Yeshua says, Af yitamena biyad. You are allowed to use even a tamei vessel to save this wine, that it should not go into the chulin on the bottom and make it mixed with truma. You're allowed to make it tamei even by hand. So what's the point? What do you see over here from what Rabbi Yeshua is saying? This wine is dripping out. It's going to go into the chulin on the bottom and become tamei. It's anyways going to become tamei. So since it's anyways going to become tamei, says Rabbi Yeshua, you could do it even by hand and make it tamei. Usually you're not allowed to make it tamei. But if it's anyways going to become tamei, you're allowed. So the Gemara is comparing the same thing in our Mishnah over here when you have chametz, which is anyways aser, that you're going to burn it anyways, so you're allowed to burn that tahir de getruma of chametz together with the tamei truma of chametz, just like over here in this case. Okay, so this was the source of what Reish Lakish meant before. This is where Rab Meir learned out the halacha regarding chametz. Says the Gemara, if this was his source, hi midivreihem, why did he use a plural term? Why did he say we learned it from their words? Midvarav mibayalei. It's only Rabbi Yeshua that says so, not Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer says you're not allowed to be metamed the truma, even though it's going to drip anyways and become tamei automatically. You're not allowed to do this. So why does he say midivreihem lashon rabim? Should have said midvarav. So the Gemara answers, you're right. Hachi ka'amar. And with this expression of midivreihem, this is what he means to say. Mimachlei kasan shel Rabbi Eliezer v'Rabbi Yeshua. From this Mishnah, where there's the argument of Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua, he learned it from the words of Rabbi Yeshua, not from Rabbi Eliezer. He's using the plural term because of the fact that there's two opinions about the subject. But really, he's learning it from Rabbi Yeshua. Deikanami. Now says the Gemara, I'll prove to you that really Rabbi Meir learned it from Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. Diktani, because afterwards in our Mishnah, what does it say? Moide, Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yeshua. After Rabbi Meir says his chiddush that you're allowed to burn the truma tamei together with the truma which is tahir, Rabbi Yossi argues on him. And right afterwards it says in our Mishnah, Umaydim Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yeshua, that you're not allowed to burn it together. So we see, how does Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua come into the Mishnah here? We see that really he learned it out, Rabbi Meir learned out his chiddush from what Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua spoke about in a different place. Rav Nachman, the name of Rabbi Baravua, also said the same pshat. Masnisen, the Mishnah, in other words, Rab Chanina is Gana Kayanim, and Rabbi Akiva, Ba'ava Tumah Deiraisa, Vlada Tumah Deiraisa. They were speaking about burning two things of Truma which are Tamei on two different levels. So from them we can't learn anything. From who did Rab Meir learn that you could burn Toyer de Getruma of Chametz together with Tamei Truma of Chametz? Midivrei Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yeshua. He learned it out from this mission that we just quoted before, where Rabbi Yeshua says, since it's anyways going to drip into the barrel and become Tamei, you're allowed to go and be metamed by hand by putting a vessel there and making it Tamei.
Mind the Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yeshua much stronger lesson than Midivrei Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yeshua?
The Gemara is going to come back to that in a second. 1 second. Now the Gemara asks a question on this. So now what are we saying? What Rab Meir said, he did not learn not from Rabbi Akiva and not from Rab Chanina's Gana Kayanim. He learned it from another place, which is interesting. Rashi and Taisa speak about this. You look in the Mishnah, it seems like he's learning it from Rab Chanina and Rabbi Akiva. That's the continuation of the Mishnah. The Gemara is bringing these two opinions in the Mishnah about this subject, but really he learned it from somewhere else. Okay, but the Gemara brings a clear braise that it seems to say very clearly that he did learn it from Rabbi Akiva and Rab Chanina's Gana Kayanim. Rav Nachman says in a braise, Omer Rabbi Yossi. Who's the one that argues with Rab Meir? Rabbi Yossi. And Rabbi Yossi says, Ein anidin daimel raya. The case that you're proving from is not similar to the case that you're saying by Chametz. It's not the same thing. Why? When our teachers testified that the Kohanim were not careful about burning different trumas together, what do they testify about? So they said two different meats from the kachim that were both tamei. One ava tamei, one vlada tamei, but they were both tamei. So zet tamei v'zet tamei. They're both tamei. That's why you can burn them together. Or that was Rab Chanina's Gana Kayanim said. Or what did Rabbi Akiva speak about? Im ala shemen shenifsal b'tful yaim, the oil that became tamei from a tful yaim, which is going to be a shlishi l'tomeh, shemadlikin oise b'nei shenitma b'tmei meis. and it's going to be a avatumah or a rishon l'tumah. So zeh pasul, v'zeh tomei. The oil which is a shlishi l'tumah is pasul. I mentioned once before, the term pasul is used when it can't make something else tomei, and the lamp itself is tomei. So they're both already defiled. They're both already tomei. Afano Maidim says Rabbi Yosi, I would also agree betrumish and itmes bevlada tumish esayfenaisam atrumish and itmes ba'avatumah. So from there you could learn out this general rule that two trumis which are tamei on different levels, it doesn't matter. Even though you're elevating the status of the tumah, you can burn it together. Avol, however, eich nisraf hatluya imatmeya. How would you be allowed to even burn truma, which is only suffik tumah, together with truma, which is definitely tamei? And he says, why not? Sheme Yove Eliyahu v'yitarena. Maybe Eliyahu Hanavi is going to come and say that this truma, which is suffik tamei, he's going to come and let us know that it's really tahir. Right? So he's saying this about a case which is suffik tuma, and needless to say, the chiddush of Rab Meir, that when you're taking truma, which is tahir, chometz, and it's totally tahir, needless to say that you're not allowed to burn that with truma, which is tamei. You can't learn it out from what Rabbi Akiva and Rab Chanina's Gana Kainim said. Okay, so right here, from this section of the Braise, you see the question that Rabbi Yosi asked on Rab Meir. So where did Rab Meir learn out what he said from? He learned it out from Rab Chanina and Rab Akiva, not from Rabbi Yeshua, like we said before. That's really the question of the Gemara here. But the Gemara here brings the conclusion of the Braise. There was another case that Rabbi Yosi brought as a proof against Rab Meir. This part of the Braise is not relevant for what the Gemara is talking about now, but this is another proof that Rabbi Yosi brought. Ha-pigol v'ha-neiser v'ha-tomeh. You have in the Beis HaMikdash pigol, which is a carbon where the person had the wrong machshava. He brought the carbon with a thought that he's going to eat it chutz l'zmanoi or chutz l'mekaimai. That makes it pigol. Neiser, leftovers of a carbon. Also, these are two things that are pasul kachim. V'ha-tomeh. And then you have kachim that became tomei, so they all have to be burnt. Beis Shammai Yomrim says Beis Shammai ein nisrafin ka'achas. You're not allowed to burn them together. Because when you take what's tamei and you're burning it together with the pigul and the nicer, you're making it tamei. Even though it's already pasul, even though you can't eat it anymore, still you're not allowed to burn it together. And Beis Hillel says, nisrafim ka'achas. You are allowed to burn them together. And the reason why you're allowed to burn them together is because, as Rashi here brings, even pigul and nicer are also tamei midrabanan. This is something that it says actually all the way at the end of Masechta Pesachim here on Daf Kuf Chaf, that Chachamim made a gzeira that pigul and neiser are tamei midrabanan. We'll see them when we get there. What's the reason for this gzeira? So therefore you're allowed to burn them all together because pigul and neiser are tamei midrabanan. So what's the proof that Rabbi Yosi is bringing from here? Beis Hillel is saying that you could burn pigul, neiser, and tamei together because pigul and neiser is already tamei. It's tamei midrabanan. But to take truma, which is tahir, even though it's chametz, and to burn it together with truma, which is tamei, you're not allowed. That was the question of Rabbi Yosi and Rab Meir. Says the Gemara, Rab Meir medivrei Rabbi Yeshua ka'amar. If Rab Meir learned his chiddush from the case of Rabbi Yeshua, when you had this barrel of wine that was going to go into another barrel of wine, which is chulin, a totally different place he learned it from. Why was Rabbi Yosi refuting his proof from learning it out from Rab Chanina's Gana Kainim? He didn't learn it out from there at all. He learned it out from Rabbi Yeshua's opinion. So this is the question that they asked on this pshat. Amalei Rav Nachman, so Rav Nachman answers, Rabbi Yosi lav adaite. Rabbi Yosi did not understand where Rab Meir learned it out from. The Hu Savar, he thought Rab Meir with Rab Chanina's Gana Kainim ka'amalei. He thought that he learned it out from Rab Chanina's Gana Kainim. V'amalei, and then Rab Meir answers him, Anna mit Rabbi Yeshua kamina. I learned it out from the case of Rabbi Yeshua. I didn't learn it out from Rab Chanina's Gana Kainim. V'amalei, now the Gemara continues and says, so really the conversation didn't end here. There was a follow-up to this conversation. V'afil Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yosi said, even according to Rabbi Yeshua, Nami, Eina hi amida. You still can't compare what Rabbi Yeshua spoke about to the case over here of burning the truma of chametz, which is tar, together with the truma of chametz, which is tamei. Why not? The Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua themselves will agree that you do have to burn each one of them separately. Over there, in that case, when you had the barrel of wine, of truma, that was going to drip into the barrel of chulin, which was tameh, there they allowed you to be metameh, but not over here. And the Gemara explains right away, what's the difference? Why isn't it the same thing? Midah or midahi. It is the exact same thing. Why is it the exact same thing? Just like over there, your truma, which is dripping out, is anyways going to become tameh, and therefore you're allowed to be metamed b'yadayim in advance. So too over here, your truma, which is chametz, you're anyways going to burn it, so you're allowed to make a tameh. So why isn't it a good comparison? Says the Gemara, no, over there's another reason why we're going to be lenient. Shani hasam the ikke hefset chulin. Over there, we want to save the barrels of wine of chulin. This chulin barrels are going to become totally destroyed. It's not enough that something is eventually going to become tameh or eventually going to become aser. That's not enough of a reason to allow you to be metamet. There has to be an additional factor. That over here you have the chulin barrels of wine that you want to save. You don't have that in the case of chametz. Maskefla Rav Yirmiyah, says Rav Yirmiyah, you have a similar thing by chametz as well. Masnisin nami, regarding chametz, Ike hefse de eitzim. If you tell a person that you have to burn your truma of chametz, which is tahir, with one fire, and truma of chametz, which is tami, with another fire, so you have to buy some extra firewood. That's also a loss of money, no? Says the Gemara, Amalei ahu saveh, so this older person answered and said, Lehefsid merube chosheshu. When you have a large loss, in this case, when you have barrels of wine that are going to get lost, that's something they were concerned of, and they allowed you to make it tummy it shouldn't drip into it. Mu'et, hefsid mu'et, loy chashashu. But a small little expense that you have to buy, a little bit more firewood, that's not a reason to allow you to make it tummy. Okay, so that's the conclusion of this pshat. We have over here, this is a pshat that it was said in the name of Rish Lakish and in the name of Rab Nachman, that they learned it out from Rabbi Yeshua. And what's the logic behind this limud over here, this idea? When something is anyways eventually going to become tameh, or it's eventually going to become aser because it's chametz, it's okay for you to go and be metamed b'yadayim, even though usually you're not allowed to be metamed truma, which is tameh. Well, that was Rabbi Yossi's shitta. Rabbi Yossi responded to Rabbi Meir and said that it's only if you also have the hefsid merubah. But Rabbi Meir himself holds, even without the issue of hefsid merubah, if it's eventually going to become tameh or eventually going to become aser, you're allowed to burn it together and make it tameh b'yadayim. Now, the Gemara is going to go back to the previous pshat that we said before, that Rabbi Meir actually did learn it out from Rabbi Chanina's Gana Kainim. Rabbi Asi said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Machloikis b'sheish. The whole argument between Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Meir, whether you're allowed to burn the truma which is ta'ir and the truma which is tameh, both chametz, is only if it's in the 6th hour. What's the 6th hour? The 6th hour is only aser. The chametz then is aser b'hana midrabanan, not minatayra. That time is when they argued about. Avol b'sheva, but in the 7th hour, once the chametz is already aser minatayra, divrei akol serfin. Then everybody will agree you could burn your chametz, your truma, which is toir and tameh together. Even Rabbi Yossi will agree to Rabbi Meir that it's not a problem because it's already tameh, it's already asam and atayra. Once it's asam and atayra, he agrees that you can burn it together. There's no issue. Amalei Rav Zera l'Ravasi, says Rav Zera to Ravasi, name should we say that Rabbi Yochanan holds like our first pshat? Kisava Rabbi Yochanan holds masnisen ba'av atumeh da'iraisa. The Mishnah, when Rab Chanina's Gana Kainim said that they burned 2 trumas, which are both tameh together, what was he talking about? He had one truma which was tameh min atayra, and then he had another truma which was a vlad hatumeh derabanan. It was only tameh min derabanan, and the Mishnah was saying, Rab Chanina's Gana Kainim was saying, you could burn truma which is tameh min atayra together with truma which is tameh min derabanan. And in fact, Rab Meir did learn it out from Rab Chanina's Gana Kainim that the same thing by chametz. By chametz, when you have chametz in the 6th hour, which is only asam d'Rabbanan, it's not yet asam atayra, but because it's asam d'Rabbanan, you're allowed to burn it together with truma, which is tameh, because it's already asam d'Rabbanan. Exactly like the case, if we're going to say that Rab Chanina's Gana Kainim was speaking about truma, which is tameh min atayra, together with truma, which is tameh midrabanan. So Rashi explains that there's 2 different approaches over here that the Gemara is really saying. in understanding what Rab Meir's heter was to burn truma, which is tar, chametz, together with truma, which is tameh. Either the basis of the heter is because it's eventually going to become aser anyways. You're burning it now because it's going to become aser anyways. It's chametz. Or you're burning it, or in the case before of Rabbi Shua, you're saving it in a vessel which is tameh, because otherwise it's going to become tameh anyways. It's going to drip into a bottom barrel where it's going to become tameh anyways. So the heter is because of the eventuality that it's going to become aser or tameh. That's one basis of the heter. Another basis of the heter is not the eventuality. Right now, it's already aser midrabanan. You're burning it in the time, in the 6th hour, when it's already aser midrabanan. So the fact that it's aser midrabanan is enough that you're not allowed to use it anymore, and therefore it's already unfit. So you're allowed to burn it together with the Truma Tahira. What's the difference between these two approaches? So Rashi explains the difference is, if you say that the point is the eventuality, that it's going to become Tameh, so that maybe even in the 3rd hour, the 4th hour, the 5th hour, before it's actually already Tameh or Aser, before it's actually aser, even then you're allowed to burn the chametz, which is tahor, together with the chametz, which is tameh, because it's going to become aser, and you're not eating it anymore. You're burning it because you're not going to be eating it. It's eventually going to become aser. So you don't have to actually wait to the 6th hour. But if we're going to say that we're learning it out from Rab Chanina's Gana Kayanim, so then it's only going to be allowed in the 6th hour. Only in the 6th hour, when it's already aser midrabanan, then you're allowed to burn it. So what the Gemara is saying is, when Rabbi Yochanan over here said that in the 6th hours, when Rab Meir allowed, did he mean takadafka the 6th hour? Or maybe he said the 6th hour, but he also meant the 5th hour, the 4th hour. The main point he was trying to say, not the 7th hour. The 7th hour is pashut because it's asam and atayra. Maybe he meant to say even before the 6th hour. So he was trying to understand what Rabbi Yochanan said. So the Gemara answers, Amalei, Rav Asi said, yes, you were right. Itmanami, that Rabbi Yochanan meant dafke in the 6th hour, that we learn it out from Rabbi Chanina's Gana Kainim. Itmanami, we learned this clearly. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Masnisim ba'ava tumid da'iraisa. The Mishnah, when Rabbi Chanina's Gana Kainim said you could burn 2 different trumas together, what was he talking about? When you have one thing which is tamim and atayre, and another truma, and vlada tumid derabanan, and another truma which is tamim derabanan, umay midivreyem. What did Rab Meir mean when he said, I learned from their words? Mi divrei Rab Chanina's Gana Kainim. He meant to say that he's learning it from Rab Chanina's Gana Kainim. Umachleikis b'sheish. And when are Rab Meir and Rab Yosi arguing? Only in the 6th hour, when it's Asam Rabbanon. Aval b'sheva, when it comes to the 7th hour, when it's Asam and Atayre, divrei Akel Sarfin. Then everybody will agree that you could burn the chametz to Truma Tahira together with the chametz Truma Tmeya, because then it's already Asam and Atayre, and everybody agrees. Okay, so just to point out one more thing before we go weiter, a little bit more here in the Gemara. Rashi points out that the chiddush of Rab Meir was, you learn what it says here in the Gemara, it seems like you don't even have to learn it out to what Chanina's Gana Kainim says. It's mamash identical. Rab Chanina's Gana Kainim is saying that if you have 2 things, one is tamim midrabanan and one is tamim and atayre, you could burn it together. Rab Meir is saying the same point. You have truma which is asam midrabanan already, so you could burn it together with the truma which is tar, because it's already asam midrabanan. So Rashi points out the chiddush here is to compare iser to tuma. Maybe only something which is tameh midrabanan are you allowed to be mitameh min atayre. How do you know that something which is not tameh at all, it's just aser to eat it midrabanan, or aser to have a nar from it midrabanan? How do you know that then you could burn it as well? But pile, it's not tameh yet. It's only aser to eat it. It's aser to have a nar from it. The chiddush is that we compare iser to tuma. But the question now is, according to Rabbi Yochanan's pshat, this comparison is beniged to the 6th hour, when it's asam d'Rabbanan. But in the 7th hour, when it's asam d'Atayre, everybody agrees that we compare Isser to Tumah, and you're allowed to burn the Tomei Chametz and the Tar Chametz of Trumah together. Says the Gemara, shall we say that we have a raya to what Rabbi Yochanan said? This distinction, this chiddush that Rabbi Yochanan said over here, that if it's already asam and atayre, then it's not a problem. Everybody would agree. Bringing back the part of the Braisa that we brought before, and this is actually Rabbi Yosi that was speaking. Rabbi Yosi brought this as a proof to his opinion. Hapigol v'hanayser v'atomei. Beishama yomrim ein nisrafin ka'achas. These 3, you're not allowed to burn them together. And Beisilo yomrim nisrafin ka'achas, you are allowed to burn them together. So when Beisilo over here says that you're allowed to burn them together, what's the machlokes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel? The machlokes over here is because the pigol and the naisar is something which is asa to eat, right? It's pasul kachim, it's asa to eat. So the machlokes over here is something which is already pasul anyways to eat. Am I allowed to burn it together with something which is tamei? In other words, it's asur, but it's asur min atayra, right? In this case, it's pigul and it's noiser and it's asur min atayra. So because it's asur min atayra, so Beis Hillel says that you could burn it together. So what do you see over here? That if it's something which is asur min atayra, so then Beis Hillel holds you're allowed to burn it together. If it would be something which is asur midrabanan, then Beis Hillel would say you can't burn it together. So here you see this distinction. In the 7th hour, when the chametz is asur min atayra, everybody would agree like Beis Hillel, you could burn it together. If it's in the 6th hour, when it's asur midrabanan, you can't burn it together. Same idea. Says the Gemara, no, shani hasam. In that case of pigul and noiser, there's another factor which I mentioned before already. The isluhu tume midrabanan. Pigul and noiser, besides the iser that it's pasul kachim, that you can't eat them, there's also a gzeira midrabanan that it's tami midrabanan. As I mentioned, the tnan, a pigul v'ha noiser, mitamen esayadayim. Chachamim were geyser that it's tami. So therefore that case is different. Over here by chametz, the chametz in the 6th hour and the 7th hour is totally tar. There is no gzeira midrabanan on it, that's tami. So therefore, lav dafka, there's no raya to Rabbi Yochanan that Rabbi Yosi would hold, you could burn it together. Should we say from another place we have a raya to what Rabbi Yochanan said, that in the 7th hour everybody would agree you could burn it together. Hapas she'ipsha, if you have bread that got moldy, v'nifsala melechal adam, and nobody, a human being, wouldn't eat this. But v'akelav yachal achla, a dog would eat it. Mitame tumas eichlin b'kebetza. The halacha of tumah still applies to it. The susceptibility of tumah that applies by food, which is in the amount, it has to be at least the size of an egg, applies here. Now it says after that in that braise, v'nisrefes matmeya bepesach. If you're burning this chametz, which a person wouldn't eat, which is not roy la'achila, you can burn it together with tamei truma. So what do you see over here? Because it's not fit for eating, you can burn it together. So from here the Gemara says I can say the same thing in the 7th hour when the chametz is asur and atayra and it's not fit to eat anymore, you can burn it together. Says the Gemara, no, you can't compare this. It's not the same thing. Shani hasam, that case is different. The afra ba'al mahu. Over there, it's like dust. Once it's not roy la'achile, so then it's different than an iser. A iser, so it's something which is still truma, and it's actually still tahir. Elamai, the Eibishter, Torah imposes an iser and says that you're not allowed to eat it. When you're talking about bread which is moldy, it's considered to be like dust, so therefore over there's no problem to burn it together. Okay, the Gemara is not going to continue on this subject, but it starts a new inyan. We'll continue Mitzvah Shem tomorrow morning.